The night sky was quiet. No wind moved, no birds sang. The world was sleeping. Above the earth, something bright cut through the darkness like fire. At first, people thought it was just another shooting star. But the light did not fade. It grew bigger, brighter, closer. In the desert, miles away from any city, the sand started to shake. A soft hum filled the air. Dogs barked in far villages. A few soldiers stood on the edge of a hidden military base, watching the sky with wide eyes. They had seen many things, but not this. A burning light touched the ground and stopped. The sand exploded in the air like a wave. A ship, tall and shining like silver, rose out of the dust. It was smooth and perfect, with no windows, no doors. It was not human. Everyone watching knew at once. This was alien. Inside the control room, Captain Ray stood in front of a large screen, watching the landing through drones. He was calm, but his eyes were sharp. Around him, young soldiers were shouting, pressing buttons, trying to keep track of everything. One said, "Sir, the object has landed." Ray nodded slowly. "I can see it," he whispered. The ship made no sound, but the ground around it was still shaking like a heartbeat. From the silver surface, a door opened like melting metal. A long bridge slid out, touching the sand without a sound. A group of tall figures stepped out. Their armor glowed blue, their faces hidden behind dark glass helmets. They moved in perfect lines, each step together, like trained soldiers. The first one walked to the front. He was taller than the rest. On his chest was a symbol no one on Earth had ever seen. He raised his hand, and the others stopped. One of the soldiers near Ray whispered, "Sir, they're not here for peace." Ray said nothing. He only smiled a little, like a man who already had a plan. The alien leader looked up at the night sky. Then he spoke. His voice was not like a human's. It was deep, like thunder underwater. But the translation system picked up the words, "Tomorrow, we conquer Earth." In a secret room underground, world leaders were already connected through screens. The president asked, "How many are there?" A general answered, "We count more than 200 so far. But the ship is big. There could be thousands." No one spoke after that. They all knew. This was not a small problem. This was a war at their doorstep. Back in the desert, the aliens were setting up their base. Machines moved fast like spiders. In minutes, tents rose from the ground, lights flashed, strange sounds filled the air. These creatures were not here to talk. They were here to take. But Earth was not the same as the other planets they had conquered. Captain Ray had read the reports. This alien race, called the Draken, had crushed many worlds. Their soldiers were strong, fast, trained for every kind of battle. They had never lost. But Ray was not afraid. He leaned back in his chair, watching the live feed. "They trained for war across galaxies," he whispered. "But they don't know what's waiting here." In the alien camp, a Draken warrior kicked a rock with his foot. The rock broke into pieces. He laughed, a strange metallic sound. He said in their language, "Weak planet." Their commander answered, "Tomorrow, this planet bows." They did not know Earth. They did not know humans. In the control room, Ray called his team together. "Listen," he said in a low voice. "We're not fighting them with guns yet. First, we show them what Earth is made of. We give them something they have never faced." A young soldier asked, "Sir, what exactly?" Ray smiled again. "Training." Everyone in the room looked confused. "Training," someone repeated. "Yes," Ray said. "But not just any training. Leg day." The room went silent. Some soldiers laughed, thinking he was joking. But Ray was not joking. He stood straight and said, "They think we are weak. Let's give them something simple. Something that looks easy. Something that breaks even the strongest man. And then, we will see." Outside, the night grew colder. The aliens moved like shadows, setting up their machines, scanning the desert, marking the land as their own. They thought Earth would be an easy victory. They thought humans would fall. Above the camp, their ship glowed like a second moon. Far away, in cities across the world, people woke up to the news. Social media exploded with videos of the glowing ship. Some were scared. Some thought it was fake. But the truth was real. The Galaxies were here. In the alien ship, the commander looked at the map of the planet. "This world is soft," he said to his officers. "Their air is light. Their gravity is weak. It will be easy." They all laughed together. But something in the air of Earth felt different to them. Heavy. Sticky. It was gravity, but not like on their planets. Their suits adjusted, but it was not perfect. They felt it in their legs. A slow pressure building with every step. One officer asked, "Commander, the pull here is strange." The commander ignored him. "We will adapt. We always do." But he walked slower than before. At the base, Ray received new reports. "Sir, they're struggling with gravity a little," one scientist said. Ray smiled wide now. "Good," he said. "Tomorrow will be fun." He walked outside to the training ground near the desert. Lights from the alien camp glowed in the distance like blue stars. He looked at the squat racks, the weights, the training hill, and the old machines. Everything was ready. The Earth looked quiet, but something big was coming. Above them, the stars shined like they were watching. Ray whispered to himself, "Welcome to Earth, soldiers. Let's see how strong your legs really are." In the alien camp, the commander stood under the silver ship. He raised his arm and shouted in their language. All soldiers turned. "Tomorrow we break this world," he said. His voice echoed in the desert like a storm. At the same time, Captain Ray's voice whispered in the dark, "No, tomorrow, this world breaks you." Two different voices. Two different plans. One night that would change everything. Morning came slowly over the desert. The sun rose like a burning coin, painting the sand in gold and red. The alien camp was alive. Tall silver towers stood in the middle, glowing with cold blue light. Alien soldiers, the Galaxies, moved in lines like machines. Their steps were heavy, slower than last night. The gravity of Earth was already testing them. They did not admit it, but they felt it in their legs. Every step felt like carrying a small stone tied to their feet. The commander of the Galaxies walked through his soldiers with pride. His armor shimmered in the sunlight. "Today," he said in their language, "we begin our conquest. We take this land without war." His soldiers shouted back, their voices deep and strong. They believed it. They always believed it. But they did not know Earth was not like other worlds. Not far from the alien base, inside a military compound, Captain Ray stood in a conference room with world leaders on big screens. Some faces were calm, others pale with fear. The president spoke first. "They are not attacking. Not yet. They're waiting for something. Should we strike first?" Ray shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "We give them something else. Something they can't predict." A general frowned. "What can break them without war?" Ray smiled, just a little. "Training." The room went silent. One minister said, "Are you joking?" Ray answered, "Do I look like I'm joking?" He walked to a large map of the alien camp. "They came here with strong bodies. They think we are weak. But they don't know how our world works. They don't know our gravity. They don't know pain like we do. So let's offer them peace. An exchange. They train with us. We train with them. They think it's a friendly gesture. But we'll show them something they'll never forget." The president leaned forward. "You mean to train them?" Ray nodded. "Yes. But not everything. Just one thing. Leg day." Some laughed nervously. But Ray didn't. His eyes were sharp and serious. "Leg day breaks even the strongest man," he said. "It's simple. It's quiet. No bullets. No war. Just pure Earth gravity." Later that afternoon, a group of human soldiers and translators moved toward the alien camp with a white flag. The Galaxies guards raised their weapons, but the commander stepped forward. His helmet reflected the sun like glass. "Why are you here?" his translator asked in a deep voice. Ray walked to the front. "We offer peace," he said. "We do not want war. We invite you to a training program. You train with us. We train with you. A sign of respect between warriors. The commander stared at him, silent. His army was ready for war, not gym talk. But he also knew something about strategy. Peace could give them time to learn about this planet. He finally said, "We accept. Tomorrow." Ray smiled softly. Tomorrow. He turned and walked away. Behind him, some soldiers whispered, "Sir, what if they refuse later?" Ray said calmly, "They won't. Their pride won't let them." That night, the human base was busy. Gym equipment was checked. Old machines were cleaned. Heavy weights were placed in perfect lines. The training hill outside the base was ready. It was not just a workout. It was a trap built with steel and sweat. Ray stood near the squat racks. He touched one of the cold metal bars. "This is going to hurt," he whispered to himself. In the alien camp, the commander sat inside his silver ship, looking at Earth's data on a floating screen. "Their training is weak," one officer said. "We've seen their soldiers online. They lift weights. They run. We do more than that every day." The commander nodded. "Yes. We'll go. We'll learn their ways. And then we'll break them with their own tricks." The Draken soldiers laughed. But they still felt the weight of Earth in their legs. A few of them stretched their legs quietly, trying to hide their discomfort. They were proud. They would never admit weakness. At the same time, in a dark hallway under the base, Ray met with a small group of elite trainers. "They're strong," one of them said. "Their muscles are built like steel. Are you sure this will work?" Ray said, "It's not about strength. It's about pain tolerance. Leg day doesn't care who you are. It breaks everyone." He looked at them one by one. "Tomorrow, they'll learn what Earth really is." Outside, the desert wind blew softly. The alien camp lights flickered like stars fallen from the sky. The human base stood firm, silent, ready. Around the world, news was spreading fast. "Aliens agree to peace training," the headlines read. Some people were relieved. Some laughed at the idea. Aliens training in a human gym sounded like a joke. But it was no joke. It was a plan. A trap without guns. As night deepened, both camps prepared in their own way. The Draken polished their armor, confident and proud. The humans polished their iron weights, quiet and serious. The alien commander stood on a tall platform, looking at the stars. He thought this planet was weak. He thought humans were soft. He thought training was nothing. He whispered to himself, "Tomorrow we show them real power." At the same time, Captain Ray stood on the training ground, looking at the same stars. He whispered, "Tomorrow, we show them leg day." Two sides. Two beliefs. One battlefield. Not of war, but of strength. When the sun would rise again, something would begin that no one in the galaxy had seen before. The next morning came bright and hot. The desert sun burned like fire. The human base was ready. Rows of gym machines and iron weights shined in the light. Captain Ray walked across the training ground with a calm face. His soldiers followed him, silent but excited. They knew what was coming. This was not an ordinary training day. This was war without bullets. On the other side of the field, the Draken soldiers arrived. They came in straight lines, tall, proud, wearing their glowing blue armor. Their commander stood at the front with his hands behind his back. His helmet covered his face, but his confidence was clear in the way he walked. When they reached the gym area, many of the aliens looked around with curiosity. They had fought in many battles across the galaxy, but they had never seen something like this. Heavy iron plates, squat racks, leg press machines, ropes, boxes, and a training hill stretched behind the gym like a silent beast waiting to attack. Ray stepped forward and greeted them. "Welcome," he said. "Today, we begin our training together." The commander nodded. "We train. We win. We will see your strength." Ray smiled softly. "Oh, you will." A translator repeated his words in the alien language. Some Draken soldiers laughed. They thought it was a joke. How could these simple metal machines break them? They were built for war. They had fought under black suns, in heavy gravity, in storms of acid rain. A few human soldiers smirked quietly. They knew the truth. Ray pointed to the gym floor. "We start easy," he said. "Warm up." The human trainers showed the movements, jogging in place, jumping, lunges. The aliens copied slowly at first. Some laughed as they moved, thinking it was child's play. But after only 10 minutes, their laughter began to fade. Their steps grew slower. The air of Earth was heavier than they expected. Sweat started to drip down their faces under their helmets. Ray watched carefully. He saw their legs shaking slightly. It had begun. "Good," Ray said loudly. "Now the real training starts. Leg day." He walked to the squat racks and put heavy plates on both sides of a steel bar. He lifted it onto his shoulders easily and squatted deep. Then he stepped back and nodded toward the aliens. "Your turn." The first Dracyn warrior stepped forward. He was huge, taller than any human, muscles hard like stone. He lifted the bar with ease and smirked. He squatted once. Easy. Twice. Still easy. But at the fifth squat, his face changed. His legs began to shake. Gravity pulled harder with every rise. On the 10th squat, his breathing grew loud, and he stumbled slightly. The human soldiers clapped and cheered. "Come on, big guy," someone shouted. The alien glared but tried again. On the 12th squat, his knees almost gave out. Ray's smile grew wider. "Next," he said calmly. One by one, more Dracyn soldiers stepped up. One by one, they faced the same wall. At first strong, then slower, then shaking, then falling. Some dropped the bar with a loud thud. Others sat down on the floor, legs burning. They had never trained like this. Their world had heavy gravity, but this was different. This was slow fire crawling up their muscles. Their suits could not help them. No armor could protect against this pain. It was personal. It was in the bones. Ray walked through the crowd like a silent hunter. "What happened?" he asked one alien who sat on the floor gasping. "Your legs are supposed to be strong." The alien said nothing. His helmet fogged up with sweat. Another trainer shouted, "Lunges next." The aliens groaned but stood up. They lined up again, their pride forcing them forward. Ray showed them the movement. One step, bend the knee, then rise. Simple. Easy to watch. Hard to do after squats. The Dracyn followed. Their heavy bodies moved clumsily. Their breathing turned into growls. Some stumbled. Some cursed in their language. The humans laughed, not to mock them but to enjoy the moment. Ray looked at the commander. "Do you still think this is easy?" he asked. The commander said nothing, but his hands clenched tight. He could feel the pressure building in his own legs. His soldiers were strong, but they were breaking slowly. The training continued. Box jumps. Sprints. Hill runs. Every step was heavier than the last. The desert sun hit their backs like a hammer. Sweat covered their armor. One alien fell face first into the sand after a sprint. His friend tried to help him up but collapsed too. Ray didn't stop them. "Keep going," he ordered. "Leg day does not stop." The human soldiers followed the same routine with ease. They were tired too, but they had trained for this. Their bodies knew the pain. The aliens did not. This was their first lesson on Earth. After 2 hours, many Dracyn soldiers were on the ground. Some rolled their legs. Some groaned. Some stared at the sky, their pride shattered. Ray walked to the center and spoke loudly. "You trained for war across galaxies. But here, on Earth, your war starts with your legs." The translator repeated his words. A few aliens growled in anger. Others lowered their heads in shame. The commander finally spoke, his voice deep and hard. "We are not finished," he said. "We will beat this training." Ray nodded slowly. "Then come back tomorrow. It's only day 1. The humans clapped. The aliens walked away slowly, their legs dragging like heavy chains. They had never felt weakness like this. The sun began to set, painting the desert sky red. Ray watched them leave and whispered, "Welcome to leg day." The second day of training began before the sun touched the desert sky. The air was still, but the ground around the alien camp was not. The Dracaewian soldiers moved slowly, their legs sore and heavy like they were made of stone. They had trained in thousands of worlds, but they had never felt anything like this pain. It was not a wound they could heal with medicine. It was deep inside their muscles, twisting with every step. The commander walked among his soldiers. He was silent, but his sharp eyes saw the truth. Many soldiers limped. Some leaned on their weapons. They tried to look strong, but their legs betrayed them. Even the commander's own legs burned when he walked. He would never admit it. Pride was their armor. "We will not fall to this weakness," he said loudly in their language. "We are Dracaewian. We are warriors." The soldiers repeated his words like a battle cry, but their voices were softer than usual. At the human base, Captain Ray stood near the gym again. He wore the same calm face as before. His soldiers were ready. The trainers checked the weights and machines. It was another leg day. Ray had already received the night report from the scouts. The aliens were tired. Perfect. This was where the real breaking began. He watched the horizon as the Dracaewian approached. Their proud march from yesterday was gone. Their steps were slower, heavier. They looked less like war machines and more like tired giants. Ray whispered to himself, "Day 2. Let's see who stands." When the aliens reached the gym, Ray greeted them with a slight smile. "Welcome back," he said. "I see you enjoyed yesterday." The commander's voice was low and sharp. "We are ready." Ray nodded. "Good. Today will be harder." The translator repeated his words, and some of the aliens groaned quietly. The warm-up started again. Jogging. Jumping. Lunges. But this time, every movement felt like fire. The aliens tried to keep their faces strong, but pain was visible. One warrior almost fell during warm-up. Another clenched his fists so hard his gloves cracked. Ray watched every reaction carefully. He was not cruel, but he knew how to break a soldier without bullets. Leg day did it better than any weapon. After warm-up, the real training began. Squats again, but this time the weights were heavier. Ray demonstrated one perfect squat and then stepped aside. The aliens stepped forward one by one. The first one tried to lift the bar. His legs shook before he even started. He pushed through the first few squats, his breath loud and desperate. By the 8th rep, he dropped the bar and fell to his knees. Ray didn't shout. He didn't need to. The silence around him was louder than any voice. The next alien tried and failed faster. The next one tried and screamed in frustration. The sound echoed across the desert. Human soldiers watched quietly. They respected the strength of the Dracaewian, but they also knew this was just the beginning. After squats came lunges, then box jumps, then hill sprints. The training hill was cruel. It was steep, hot, and long. Yesterday, some of the aliens had managed to run up. Today, many couldn't make it halfway. Their legs trembled, their armor felt heavier than before. Some dropped to the ground halfway up and crawled. The sand stuck to their sweaty armor like glue. The commander tried to hide his struggle, but his steps grew slower with every climb. His breathing turned rough. He was strong, but even strong legs break when the earth fights back. Ray walked beside the hill slowly, hands behind his back. He didn't yell orders. He let the weight of the training speak for him. "Keep going," he said in a calm voice. "This is nothing. Just Earth saying hello." Some Dracaewian soldiers fell to the ground, punching the sand in anger. They were proud warriors. Being broken by gravity and simple workouts was worse than losing a battle. Ray stopped near one alien who lay on the ground breathing hard. "This is not war," he said softly. "This is just day 2. The alien glared at him but said nothing. Pride kept him silent. When training moved back to the gym floor, their movements were slower, weaker. The humans still trained beside them, sweating but steady. That was the difference. The humans knew this pain. They had lived it many times before. The Dracaewian were learning it for the first time, and it was eating them alive. At one point, an alien soldier collapsed during lunges. His helmet hit the floor with a loud sound. Trainers rushed forward, but he raised his hand. "I'm fine," the translator repeated. But his voice was shaking. His pride was still alive, even when his legs were not. The commander watched in silence. He was furious, not at Ray, not at the humans, but at himself. His people were warriors. How could something so simple break them? Ray walked up to him slowly. "Commander," he said, "this is the planet you want to conquer. Strong, isn't it?" The commander stared at him. His jaw clenched. "We will not lose," he said. Ray smiled. "Good. Because this is just the warm-up." As the sun began to set, the training finally ended. The Dracaean soldiers lay on the ground, staring at the orange sky. Some were quiet. Some groaned softly. Their legs felt like they were made of fire and stone. They had fought monsters before. They had survived black holes. But nothing had ever felt like this. Captain Ray stood at the edge of the field, hands on his hips, watching them. He didn't gloat. He didn't laugh. He simply whispered, "And tomorrow, it gets worse." The commander rose slowly, his legs shaking. He looked at his soldiers. "We are not done," he said in a hard voice. "We will beat this." But deep in his mind, a small doubt grew. Could they? The third morning arrived quietly. The desert was cold before sunrise. A thin mist floated low on the sand. Inside the alien camp, the Dracaean soldiers woke up slowly. Their legs burned with every movement. Some struggled to stand. Others leaned against the walls of their silver tents, their breathing heavy even before the training began. Pride was the only thing keeping them on their feet. Their armor felt heavier than ever, as if the gravity of Earth had grown overnight. The commander walked through the camp silently, watching his soldiers. He saw pain in their eyes, but he also saw something else. Determination. None of them were ready to say the words "I can't." Even the weakest among them tried to stretch their sore legs. They were born and raised as warriors. Giving up was not an option. Still, whispers passed between them like wind in the night. Some spoke quietly about leaving, about how this training was worse than any war. Others clenched their fists and swore they would not break. In the human base, Captain Ray stood near the gym, hands behind his back. He had been watching drone footage from the alien camp. He saw tired faces. He saw shaking legs. But he also saw fire growing in their eyes. He knew this part well. Day 3 was always the turning point. Some would quit. Some would rise. Leg day was not only about strength. It was about spirit. And this was the day that would decide who truly belonged on Earth. As the sun climbed slowly into the sky, the Dracaean army appeared at the human base. Their steps were slower than the first day but more stable than the second. Something had changed. They were still in pain, but now they carried it like a weapon instead of a wound. Ray noticed the difference immediately. He smiled faintly. "Good," he whispered. "Let's see who breaks today." When the aliens reached the gym, the commander stepped forward and spoke through the translator. "We do not back down. Not today." Ray nodded calmly. "Then let's begin." The warm-up started. Jogging, jumping, lunges. The same movements that had tortured them before. But this time, fewer aliens fell during warm-up. Their bodies had started to adjust to Earth's pull. The pain was still there, but they moved through it. Some even shouted battle cries while lunging forward. The humans clapped and cheered. The real training began. Heavier squats, faster jumps, longer hill sprints. The desert heat rose quickly, wrapping around the gym like a fire. The aliens pushed harder. Sweat poured down their faces, but they didn't stop. One alien warrior, who had collapsed on the second day, shouted with each rep. His legs trembled, but he didn't fall. Ray walked past him slowly. "Stronger," he said. "That's it." On the hill, the commander led the run himself. On day 2, he had struggled halfway. Today, he ran with a growl in his chest. His armor banged against his legs with each step, but he kept moving. Behind him, his soldiers followed, some crawling, some running, some screaming in pain. But they moved. They refused to stop. Something powerful was happening in that sand. This was no longer just Earth's training. This was becoming a war inside their minds. Halfway through the session, Some aliens collapsed, their legs finally giving out. They lay in the sand breathing heavily. A few whispered that they couldn't continue. Ray watched quietly. He didn't push them. Leg day decides on its own. Those who were meant to rise would rise without a hand. And then it happened. One of the fallen soldiers slammed his hand into the sand and forced himself up. His legs shook like tree branches in a storm, but he climbed the hill step by step. One human soldier shouted, "Yes. That's it," and others joined in. Soon, cheers filled the air. The Draken soldiers were no longer just training. They were fighting something invisible. Ray crossed his arms and nodded. "Now they understand," he whispered to himself. At the bottom of the hill, a young Draken soldier cried out in pain. His legs couldn't carry him anymore. He stared at the top of the hill, his breathing fast. Another alien extended his hand, pulling him up. Together they climbed. Their steps were heavy but in rhythm. The humans saw this and cheered louder. The line between humans and aliens started to blur. They were not enemies in that moment. They were simply people trying to survive leg day. The sun climbed higher, and the ground grew hotter, but the training did not stop. Lunges, squats, hill runs. Step after step, pain after pain. Some fell and stayed down. Some fell and stood again. The commander reached the top of the hill for the first time. He raised his arm in the air, breathing like fire. His soldiers roared behind him. Even Ray felt a spark of respect in his chest. He stepped forward and shouted, "Now that's leg day." The translator repeated it, and some aliens laughed weakly. When the training ended, the field looked like a battlefield. Bodies on the sand, heavy breaths, broken pride, but stronger hearts. The commander walked slowly toward Ray. His legs trembled, but he stood tall. "This is not war," he said through the translator. "This is worse." Ray laughed softly. "And yet, you're still standing." The commander looked around at his soldiers. Many were still on the ground, but their eyes were alive. "Not broken. Not beaten. We will not run," he said. "We will conquer this." Ray nodded. "Then tomorrow, it gets even harder." The commander did not look afraid anymore. He looked ready. As the sun began to set, the Draken soldiers returned to their camp. They limped, but they held their heads high. Some whispered that they would not return. Others whispered that they would never give up again. Pain was no longer the enemy. It was their teacher. Inside his tent, the commander sat with his helmet off. His legs felt like fire, but there was pride burning in his chest. On day 1, they laughed. On day 2, they suffered. But on day 3, they became something else. Stronger. Captain Ray watched them leave from the gym. He knew this was the moment that decided everything. Tomorrow would either make them or break them completely. The fourth morning came with no wind and no sound. The desert sky was pale and cold, but everyone in the human base could feel the heat waiting to rise. This was not like the other days. There was something different in the air. Soldiers moved quickly, setting up the final training course. Heavy weights, sprint lanes, steep hill paths, and a tall mountain of sand and stone stood like a monster at the end of the field. It was the final test. Captain Ray stood at the edge of the training ground, hands behind his back. His eyes were sharp, calm, but filled with quiet excitement. Today would show him everything. Today he would know who would break and who would rise. The Draken soldiers marched in from their camp, their armor dusty, their faces hidden but their steps stronger than before. The pain in their legs had not vanished, but they carried it with them now like a weapon. They did not stumble. They did not drag their feet. They looked at the training field as if they were going to war. The commander walked in front of them. His steps were slow but steady. He stopped when he saw the final challenge. His eyes narrowed behind his helmet. "What is this?" he asked through the translator. Ray walked forward and pointed at the hill. "Your final test," he said. "You trained with weights. You ran the hill. You survived leg day. But today, you climb. All the way. No shortcuts. No mercy." The alien soldiers stared at the hill. It was taller than anything they had trained on before. The The top disappeared into the morning fog. Some of them swallowed hard. Even humans avoided this part of the course. But this was the last day. The moment of truth. Ray looked at them one by one. "You can quit now," he said. "No one will stop you. But if you climb to the top, you'll never look at this planet the same way again." The translator repeated his words in the Draken language. The commander clenched his fists. "We will climb," he said. His soldiers shouted in response. The air trembled with their voices. The final training began. First came the squats. Ray made sure the warm-up was not soft. Heavy bars. Full representatives. Pain first. The Draken pushed through. Some trembled, some screamed, but they didn't fall like they did on the first day. Their bodies had learned how to fight Earth's weight. Then came lunges, box jumps, sprints across the sand. Every move burned their legs more than fire, but they kept going. Sweat rolled down their faces, dripping into the sand. When Ray finally pointed to the hill, everyone was breathing like warriors ready for their last battle. "Climb," he said. No countdown. No warning. Just that one word. The aliens charged forward. The first few meters were easy. Their armor clanked against the rocks. The sun began to rise behind them, turning the desert gold. But the hill grew steeper with every step. Gravity pulled harder. The sand slid under their feet. Every step they took, the ground tried to drag them back down. Some fell to their knees but forced themselves back up. Others grabbed the rocks with their hands, crawling upward. Ray watched from the bottom with his soldiers. "This is it," he whispered. "This is where they break, or become something else." The commander was in the lead. His legs screamed with every step, but he didn't slow down. He shouted something in his language, and his soldiers echoed back. Their voices rolled down the hill like thunder. Halfway up, one soldier slipped and fell hard. His legs were shaking, his hands sinking in the sand. The commander looked back but didn't stop. The soldier tried to stand but fell again. Ray saw it happen. This was the moment leg day always created. Some fall and never rise. Some rise and never fall again. The fallen soldier clenched his fists, dug them into the sand, and screamed. Slowly, shaking, he stood back up. He climbed again, step by step. The humans watching started clapping. Soon, the clapping turned into a cheer. The Draken soldiers kept climbing. One by one, they began to fall behind, but no one gave up. Even those who were crawling kept moving forward. Sweat covered their armor like rain. The air was filled with heavy breathing and the sound of metal scraping against stone. Near the top, the commander's legs began to shake. He had never pushed himself this far. His vision blurred. His armor felt like it weighed 1,000 tons. Behind him, his soldiers were still climbing. In front of him, the last few meters waited like a monster. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward. At that same moment, the soldier who had fallen earlier was only a few steps behind him. His breathing was wild, but his eyes burned with fire. The two of them climbed side by side, dragging their tired bodies upward. Suddenly the commander slipped. His hand missed the rock. His body slid down. Gasps filled the air. Ray's eyes narrowed. The soldier behind the commander grabbed his arm. Their armor scraped together as the soldier pulled with everything he had left. The commander grunted, his legs kicking against the rocks, and with one final push they both rose again. The humans erupted in cheers. For the first time, the Draken soldiers shouted not like invaders, but like a team. Together they climbed the last few steps. When they reached the top, they raised their arms toward the sky. The sun exploded over the horizon, bathing the hill in gold. The human soldiers cheered louder. Down below, Ray nodded slowly. This was not the same army that had landed 4 days ago. This was something new. The Draken had faced Earth's gravity, Earth's pain, and they had survived. The commander stood at the top breathing hard. His helmet hung loose in his hand. "Earth is strong," he said through the translator. "But so are we now." Ray looked up at him and shouted, "Welcome to the top of leg day." Laughter and cheers filled the desert. Even some of the human soldiers were wiping sweat from their faces. It didn't matter that they were different species. In that moment, they were just warriors who had climbed the same hill. The sun burned high over the desert when the Draken soldiers finally climbed back down from the hill. Their armor was covered in dust, their legs shook with every step, but their heads were held high. There was no shame on their faces now. The pain that once broke them had become a part of them. The human soldiers waited at the bottom. They were not clapping out of pity, they were clapping out of respect. What had started as a brutal test had turned into something far greater. Captain Ray stood in front of them, hands on his hips, watching the Draken commander walk toward him. Both men were covered in sweat and dirt. They did not need translators for this moment. Respect spoke louder than language. "Not bad," Ray said with a small smile. The commander stared at him for a long moment, then gave a slow, firm nod. "You fight with the ground," the commander said through the translator. "You make it your weapon." Ray chuckled. "It's not the ground," he said. "It's the legs." The human soldiers laughed softly. The commander didn't. He was still serious, still breathing hard, but there was no anger in his eyes now. There was understanding. When they first landed, the Draken saw Earth as just another weak planet. They thought they would conquer it like they had conquered so many others. But Earth had fought back without lasers, without warships, without blood. It had fought back with gravity and sweat. The Draken had not expected to lose to something so simple. And yet here they were, still standing. Ray stepped closer. "You came here to train for war," he said. "But war isn't just about guns. It's about who can keep standing when everything hurts. You felt that. You learned it." The commander looked down at his trembling legs. He remembered the first day, how they had collapsed, how they had cursed this strange world. Now, the same pain felt like a medal on his skin. "Yes," the commander said. "We learned." The human soldiers and alien warriors stood facing each other. The air was quiet. Then, one of the younger Draken soldiers stepped forward. He removed his helmet and dropped to one knee, pressing his fist into the sand in a gesture of warrior respect. A human sergeant stepped forward and saluted him back. It was small, but it was the beginning of something no one had expected. More Draken followed. One by one, they lowered themselves, heads bowed slightly, not in defeat but in respect. Ray raised his hand, and the human soldiers saluted in return. For a few seconds, the wind blew across the field, carrying no sound but the echo of shared strength. Later, as the training ground was cleared, the humans set up water and recovery tents. The Draken sat together, still breathing heavily. They spoke in their own language, their deep voices mixing with the wind. They were not complaining like before. They were talking like warriors who had shared a battlefield. One alien touched his leg and laughed weakly. Another smacked his friend on the shoulder. The pain was still there, but now it was a badge. Ray walked through the camp with a towel around his neck. He saw the commander sitting alone, staring at the hill they had climbed. "It changes you," Ray said, walking up behind him. The commander didn't look at him, just kept staring. "It does," he answered. "When we came here, we thought we were ready for anything. We were wrong." Ray nodded. "Earth has a way of humbling everyone. Even us." The commander finally turned his head. "You train your soldiers with pain," he said. "You build them from the ground up." Ray smiled faintly. "That's the only way they survive. The body breaks, then it rebuilds stronger. Leg day is not about strength. It's about finding the part of you that refuses to quit." The commander thought about that. His people had won wars with weapons, with ships, with strategies. But this kind of fight was different. It was quiet. It was personal. It stripped away pride and left only will. "We underestimated you," he said. "We underestimated this world." Ray shrugged. "Most people do." In the distance, human soldiers and Draken soldiers were no longer standing apart. Some trained together lightly, stretching or testing their balance. Others sat in circles sharing water and strange alien rations. For the first time, it didn't look like two armies. It looked like one. Ray watched as a human soldier showed a Draken how to stretch his legs properly, and the alien actually listened. That alone was something no one could have imagined 3 days ago. The commander stood slowly, his legs still weak but no longer failing. "We will remember this," he said. "We will remember Earth's strength." Ray met his eyes. "And Earth will remember yours," he replied. The two warriors shook hands. It was not a soft handshake. It was strong, almost crushing, but it carried no hatred. Only respect. That night, the desert base was quieter than usual. No one talked about war plans or battles. No one looked at the Draconian like invaders anymore. Around the fires, humans and aliens sat together, talking through translators, laughing through tired breaths. The hill stood in the distance like a silent guardian, glowing under the moonlight. Every soldier who looked at it felt the same thing, not fear, not anger, but pride. They had climbed it. They had survived it. In the commander's tent, he sat alone for a while, looking at the training records. His legs hurt so badly that even sitting was a challenge, but he smiled, a small, tired smile. He had never respected an enemy like this before. Earth was not just a planet to conquer. It was a teacher. And it had taught them well. The night after the final test was calm. The desert wind moved softly through the camp. The stars above shined like cold silver eyes watching everything. Both human and Draconian soldiers sat around quiet fires, their armor loose, their muscles sore, but their hearts strangely light. No one shouted orders. No one stood guard with cold suspicion. It was the first time since the alien ship had landed that the camp felt peaceful. Captain Ray walked through the quiet base with his hands in his pockets. He watched the two groups, once enemies, now sitting together like tired warriors who had survived the same storm. A few human soldiers laughed as they tried alien rations, while Draconian soldiers awkwardly tasted human coffee and made faces that made everyone laugh. Ray had seen many battles, but this was something new. This was not one with guns or strategy. It was one with sweat, pain, and respect. At the other end of the camp, the commander stood near the landing ship, looking at the sky. The ship's metal reflected the firelight, but his eyes were far away. He thought about the first day they came here, full of confidence. They had believed Earth was soft, weak, easy to break. But Earth had broken them instead. And because of that, it had made them stronger. Ray walked up to him and stopped beside him. Neither spoke for a while. They simply looked at the stars. The commander finally broke the silence. "When we return home," he said slowly through the translator, "I will tell them this world is not weak." Ray smirked. "Good. Because we aren't." The commander glanced at him. "We came to train. We thought we would teach your people. But we were the ones who learned." Ray nodded. Leg Day has a way of humbling even the toughest. The commander let out a short, rough laugh. It was the first real laugh Ray had heard from him. The sound was deep, almost like thunder. "Yes," he said. "Your Leg Day will be remembered in our history." In the middle of the camp, both species gathered as the commander called for a meeting. His voice carried power, but it was no longer sharp with arrogance. It was steady and clear. "Draconian soldiers," he said, "when we landed here, we thought we were the strongest. We were wrong. We learned something new. We learned that strength is not just power. It is pain. It is will. It is the fire that burns when the body wants to stop." His soldiers stood taller as he spoke. He turned to face the humans. "You showed us this. You did not fight us with weapons. You fought us with the ground beneath your feet. And you won." The human soldiers stood silent, listening carefully. Then the commander lifted his arm and struck his chest with his fist, the Draconian warrior sign of honor. "You are worthy allies," he said. A murmur moved through the crowd. Even the translator's voice sounded proud. Ray stepped forward and nodded. "You came here as strangers. You will leave as brothers in arms," he said loudly. "We may not speak the same language, but pain and strength are the same everywhere." The soldiers on both sides cheered. The sound was not wild like a victory cry. It was strong and deep like a heartbeat. Something real had changed. After the speech, the Draconian soldiers approached the humans one by one. Some offered their hands. Others gave their alien salute. A young Dracaewian soldier who had fallen on the hill and climbed back up walked to Ray. His armor was scratched, his legs still stiff, but his eyes were bright. "I did not believe I could climb," he said through the translator. "But I did. I will never forget this." Ray patted his shoulder. "That's the point," he said. "Leg day never leaves you." The soldier laughed, a short, awkward sound, but real. It was the sound of pride earned. As the night went deeper, plans changed. The Dracaewian no longer talked about conquering Earth. They talked about joining forces. They had traveled across galaxies searching for powerful warriors. They had found them here, not in war, but in training. The commander and Ray walked to the war table that had once held invasion maps. Now it held joint training plans. No lines of attack. No red markers of destruction. Only a shared future. "We will return with more soldiers," the commander said. "Not to fight, but to train. To learn. To build strength like yours." Ray extended his hand. "Then we'll be ready," he said. "And next time, we'll see how fast you climb that hill." The commander shook his hand, their grip firm, their eyes steady. It was not a deal signed on paper. It was a warrior's promise. Days later, the Dracaewian ship prepared to leave. The soldiers who once marched with arrogance now marched with respect. As they passed the training hill, many of them stopped and looked at it one last time. It was no longer just a hill. It was a battlefield where their pride had broken and rebuilt. Ray and his team stood at the landing pad watching the massive ship rise. As it lifted off, a Dracaewian flag dropped from a small hatch and landed near Ray's boots. He picked it up and smiled. It was their way of saying, "We'll return." The sky turned bright as the ship disappeared into the stars. The desert was quiet again, but something had changed forever. Ray turned to his team. "All right," he said, "same hill tomorrow. No excuses." His soldiers groaned, laughing at the same time. The legend of Earth's Leg Day had begun. Across galaxies, the Dracaewian would speak of it not as a defeat, but as the day they found a world too strong to conquer, and too worthy to fight against. It was not the end of a story. It was the beginning of a new alliance.